definitely want to thank all of the sponsors that donated and sponsored money for the conference. We certainly couldn't have done that without the sponsorships. For our breakfast this morning, it was provided by Brotherhood Catering. Brotherhood Catering is a local business based in St. Paul that employs African-American young men, teaches them business management skills. And we'll also be having lunch today from Afro Deli. Remember that your name tag is your lunch ticket, so if you didn't register, make sure you go register at the table out there. And finally, I'm going to introduce our first speaker for today. Dr. Andy Furco is the Associate Vice President for Public Engagement at the University of Minnesota, where he also serves as Associate Professor of Higher Education and Director of the university's International Center for Research on Community Engagement. As Associate Vice President, he works to further the institutionalization of all forms of community engagement across the university's research, teaching, and public service activities. His scholarly work focuses on examining the role of public engagement in both K-12 and higher education systems in the U.S. and abroad. From 1994 to 2007, Dr. Furco worked at the University of California, Berkeley as the founding director of the Service Learning Research and Development Center, as a faculty member at the Graduate School of Education. His publications include the books Service Learning, The Essence of Pedagogy, and Service Learning Through a Multidisciplinary Lens, as well as more than 60 journal articles and book chapters that study the practice of community engagement. He is a recipient of the 2003 Award for Outstanding Contributions to Service Learning Research and National Association for Experiential Education's 2006 Researcher of the Year Award. He is the 2012 recipient of the Thomas Ehrlich Civically Engaged Faculty Award presented by the National Campus Compact. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Andy Furco.
Thank you, Mike. That's quite the lead up there. I don't know where you got that, but that's quite the lead up. I'm not really a speaker, I'm more of a greeter, and I just came here to say thank you all for joining us. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Great. Really good, I think, especially after yesterday. I just wanted to take a few moments to say welcome and thank you very much for being part of this event and to give me this opportunity to really express our sincere thanks on behalf of the University of Minnesota. It really has been wonderful to be part of a conference where we're not showcasing all the great things we're doing, but really talking about and challenging the issues that really undergird the work around community engaged partnership, community engaged research. You know, I have to say, like other institutions of higher education, the University of Minnesota has been working very diligently over the last several years to really improve the way we do our community engaged work. And we have spent much time really making some fundamental changes in how we connect with communities. We are a research university, you know, we're also a land-grant university, so research is very important. It's kind of the bread and butter of the university. And so how do we engage in doing research of significance that's going to benefit society, which by the way is what our mission statement says, and do it in a way that we do it with community. And so one of the things we've been doing is moving away from a project-focused approach to community engaged research to one that focuses more on partnerships. You know, the kinds of projects where we get a grant, we get excited, we set up a program, and guess what? The grant period ends, and thank you very much, it's been great working with you, and then we just move on to the next project. And really moving away from that kind of approach to one where we're focused on partnerships, on building relationships that have mutual benefits and reciprocity, where everyone at the table contributes to making something that we can't do alone, really having value added by working together. And having those kind of deeper, sustained partnerships. And that's been something that we've been working on, shifting that paradigm from partnerships, projects to partnerships. We've also tried to move away from framing our engagement work as in terms of problematizing the community. And I know someone mentioned that yesterday, I was really glad to hear that. Where, you know, the community is just a place that has needs, and we're the experts. We have PhDs, we have all these credentials, we write all these books, and all these papers, and therefore we know everything. And we're going to go in and we're going to solve these problems. And really moving away from that approach, which has been predominant in higher education. And really moving towards not just doing for community or even in community, but working with community. where there's knowledge and assets and experience outside of the academy that actually can help us all of us do the work better. And so it's that approach that we're trying to cultivate. And so as the university's Associate Vice President for Publication, I'm so delighted that we're having these kinds of conversations. These conversations that really bring into light the complexities and challenges that undergird this work. This is not easy. And a lot of us within universities aren't trained to do this work, so we're trying to inculcate some practices within the university, the capacity among researchers who go into the community to partner. In the 7 years I've been at the University of Minnesota, I have to say that we've made some great progress, but there's a lot more work to be done. And so it's conferences like these, events like these, that help us move that agenda forward for us. Thank you very, very much. I just want to give a shout out to some of the people who really made this possible. Professor Bicknell, thank you so much. Brian Lozensky, Aaron Dyke, Shannon McManaman, who are organizing this event. Without them, we wouldn't have this event. So please join me in that. And I know Brian thanks the people. I also want to share thanks with the community partners who lent their time and space, resources, expertise to this event. All the University of Minnesota units that stepped up and said, yes, these conversations are important. Thank you so much for being part of it. Also, all of the great presenters who shared their insights and really robust, rich conversations. Yesterday was amazing. And I'm looking forward to some more of those conversations today. So thank you all for lending your contributions. And lastly, I want to thank all of you for being part of this. Some of you came a very long way to join us today, and thank you so very much for engaging us in these critical conversations and courageous conversations. And so my hope is that we will continue to have these conversations beyond this conference, and that we'll continue to push the envelope on securing high-quality community partnerships. And I hope that these conversations will spur us to advance this work. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm David Kim. I'm one of us. And we represent Youth Prize Research and Design, which we'll talk about in a minute. But first of all, we were going to have like this kind of nice little scripted thing, but then we heard from Monique about the Michelle Fine School of Public Speaking, in which she writes stuff down on a piece of paper on a train ride and then provides brilliance in the next day. So we kind of wanted to follow in brilliance and see what happens with, you know, all that is Michelle Fine. So here's our little thing. So yeah, again, we represent Youth Prize Research and Design. There's 5 of us: Bianca Dawkins, Phoebe Marcus, Jorge and myself, and then also Nisi Parker. We're a team of young folks who do participatory action research, and then as well as design of certain projects and strategies. And what we really did was we've developed kind of this interesting model, because we are a funder, but we also do earned income work with governments and organizations to provide, research and design to them, which supports our team. And then also we've been able to carve out these really dope spaces where we can make grants to PAR projects that probably would never get funded. And I know we've been talking about grants, so it's like a big thing to be able to hang out and talk about the grant that we're going to do. Brian Lozensky is one of our grantees with the Uhuru Youth Scholars. And they're doing a project on HBCUs and access here in Minnesota. We also have a dope project called Wakangije Tehindapi, which is a group of Dakota women who are looking at how to reestablish traditional midwifery practices on the Upper Sioux Reservation. We don't think these things get funded otherwise, so we're really excited to use our space within this nonprofit world to do that. And then we also facilitate a few of our own PAR groups. But we do have a little bit bigger vision than that.
So as part of that larger vision, we had first started out doing a lot of direct research as a team, but we've started realizing that as a funder, our greatest asset was being able to create those spaces that Dave was talking about. So now we see that really our biggest kind of role is in providing funding, but also relating other research teams to each other and providing a larger network for Minnesota at the state. So that's really our mission right now in our role. And in search of that, like I said, we were very inexperienced. We didn't really know much about like how to build that sort of thing. So we heard about the Critical Participatory Action Research Institute that happened at CUNY over in New York, and that is how we met the March Justice Project. And we went over there, and it was David, I, and Andrew Rockman, another member of our research team. That he forgot to introduce. But we went over there and really learned about not only what the essence of participatory action research was, but what community engaged research was, what the differences between those two were, and what the considerations you had to take into account when you're working with people who traditionally aren't seen as sources of knowledge. So that was a transformative experience for us, something that we're also very excited to see you guys here again, very excited for the work you're going to present on. And again, also very excited for everybody that's going to be here. So, one thing we also wanted to highlight is that they also brought out 9 people, which is very rare for people that so we thought that should definitely be emphasized. And then we also have, go ahead and introduce them. So, I'm going to introduce you now. So we have, from the March Justice Project over in New York, we have Paul Bartley, Vaughn Bracey, Anthony Downs, Corey Green, Pakriti Hassan, Nadine Shepard, Brett Stoudt, María Torre, and Jacqueline Yates, all from the March Justice Project.
Spiel here, these are some dope-ass people doing some powerful-ass work. Let's hear it for the March Justice Project.
Thank you for probably what is the best introduction we will ever get in our entire lives. We strive to be as cool as the two of you. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see that the rain was just a little bit, but not drowning us out. We're really thrilled to be here. We also want to join the chorus of thank yous for those of you who brought us out, who gave us the seed money that we then found more money to represent our breadth and spread. And if you can imagine, we're actually a few more people. But we really want to thank Brian. It's been an amazing experience. We run these Critical Participatory Action Research Institutes every June, and unexpected flowers keep growing from them. And Brian is one of them, not that he is a flower, but that he, you know where I'm going with that, that this conference, you know, is one of the many things that, the little seeds that get planted that grow into really beautiful kinds of gatherings and projects, and not that we're claiming the conference by any means, but that folks, you know, inspire each other. And to have David and Jorge here, who are just with us this past June, it feels like we're coming home. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to Aaron and Shannon and Vic also for all the hard work that you've done, and to everybody else who's volunteered and printed things out for us and arranged food and chairs for us to sit in. We organized this morning as sort of a conversation among us, right? Which is not totally easy to do in a gym with almost, whatever are we, 250 people? But we're gonna try our best, all right? So you're gonna see us talking with each other, talking over each other, you know, finishing each other's sentences, and that's really just gonna give you a glimpse of kind of who we are, and how we work. As David Kim said yesterday in a session, we sort of work the vibe among us, right? We work the vibe in the spirit, in the context that we're in. So we'll be doing that in action for you today. Again, please know how honored we are to be joining you from New York City, to share stories about our work, to share what went wrong. But really for us is more about challenges and sort of opportunities that emerged in the work that we've done together. The March Justice Project was born out of solidarity, of rage and anger, really, about the abusive, aggressive policing that was happening in New York City, or that has been happening in New York City. For us, really what went wrong, if you really want our real truth, is just that, is that the NYPD, the New York Police Department, was literally abusing residents, members of our own city. You'll hear details, so I won't go on that. But it was really our conviction and our sense of urgency that motivated the work that you're going to hear about, and that continues to. And it really has informed our coming together. Before we go on, we're going to pause for a moment and ask you to turn to the person sitting next to you or nearest to you, and to have the two of you share for a moment, what's the urgent issue that you feel you need to address in your work? All right, so let's just take a couple of moments to the person nearest to you, or
just another minute.
So what came up? Some volunteers on some really urgent, passionate issues that came up. Who wants to volunteer their urgent issue? Go ahead.
Hi. My name's Sean. I'm here from the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. Yeah. Woo! Oh, sorry. I don't know if I can. Yeah, I can talk really loud. Yeah. You guys can hear me. I'll yell. So my work is mostly with LGBT folks of color, and my urgent issue that I was thinking of is that I see this a lot in the Latino community and in the African American community too, is that communities of color, we like to pretend like we don't have folks like that. And we're not like that, and we don't have gay folks, and we don't have trans folks, and that's just not true. And so that leads to a lot of issues for queer people of color who are trying to live in their communities and be who they are from a race perspective, and aren't allowed to be who they are from a sexuality perspective.
Wonderful. How about one other important, passionate issue you're working on and why you do this work? Go ahead, two of you.
Hi, I'm Leslie Wright. I'm a research project manager in Denver, Colorado, and also community liaison for the LGBT community. I have just a comment, something that my partner Debbie and I were talking about is the institution of research. I'm starting to question it and how much money goes into that institution. And as Debbie pointed out, and then there's a publication that sits on a wall. We have really smart libraries right now, but what's the impact? And then also, I just have a question. Are you guys good with photographs?
Are you okay? I'm okay with it. I think we're okay with it.
I think we'd be hypocrites. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, we were filming you, so.
I forgot to mention, if you want to tweet, if you're inclined that way, and you do, for us, it's @public_science. And Brian, is there one for the conference? Do you all know it?
Hashtag.
Hashtag, whatever? No. All right, so there you go. For us, you can follow us at @public_science, and if you want to do a hashtag, you can just
So, this was our issue. Our issue was aggressive policing and particularly stop and frisk. How many of you know what stop and frisk is? Everyone. Wonderful. All right. And how many of you know what broken windows order maintenance policing is? Can someone give a definition? Someone will volunteer a definition of what we're talking about? Go ahead.
Broken windows is this idea that if you stop, like, there's broken windows in a community, then it'll lead to more decay or more infrastructure coming down. So in terms of policing, it's this idea that you strongly enforce small crimes so that they don't develop into larger crimes and into a more systemic.
That's the assumption. And the engine behind that is often stop and frisk, stop, question, search, frisk. Often it's stop, search, aggression, prison. It can be very aggressive. It's very problematic. And what communities does it generally occur in? Black and brown communities, Hispanic communities. So for us in New York City, stop and frisk was increasing since 2002 by 300% by the time we met in 2011. In 2011, there were nearly 700,000 stops, largely in communities, in black and brown communities, in poorer communities, and 84% of the stops were Black and Latino, particularly Black and Latino men, not just young men. The trans community was particularly affected, the LGBT community particularly affected, and sexual harassment of young women, which we'll talk about a little bit more. 90% were innocent, meaning 90% were not arrested or given a ticket or summons, and only about, not 2%, but 0.2% of the stops, a gun was found. So very little output, a lot of harm, and a lot of contact with the police and an arm of our government. In the particular neighborhood that we're going to be talking about, and where many of the folks here are from, the South Bronx. The South Bronx is, for those who, many of you probably know Manhattan and sort of Harlem, and then above Harlem is the Bronx. When I say the Bronx, what do you think of? What? The Zoo, South Bronx, hip-hop, the hood, the ghetto, right? So we're about 6 blocks from Yankee Stadium, and in a highly policed neighborhood. And we were Maria and I were particularly interested in that neighborhood because it had 50% of the stops in the 44th precinct led to some sort of physical contact by police. It was far more than anywhere else in the city. So we wanted to know, from our perspective, what was going on that there were so many stops and then so much physical aggression when the stops occurred. So for the moment, well, we are working on 2 computers here. And they're not synced, and so you'll have to excuse us, and we're working on wireless, and so we've got... But for the moment, imagine yourself in September. It's a little cold outside. You're in the South Bronx, in this neighborhood. It's dark. People are coming home from work. We have a van that projects like a bat signal onto public housing. And it looks something like that. And in the little courtyard, impromptu, not announced, we hear some music, which, again, just bear with us, we're working on it. You hear some music, you see some video, you start seeing people gathering and looking out of the window. Press the escape button.
See, this could be a what went wrong, but really it's just a challenge.
You see...
2 screens allows us to do different kinds of stuff.
You hear this? Which is drawing people in. And then, in a moment of maybe a little surprise, here we go. We have this. So now you've got the setting, and now you hear what happened.
Dear NYPD,
we are the Morris
Justice Project.
We surveyed over 1,000 local residents to study police in the neighborhood.
Over the last year, NYPD made 3,920 police stops just in our neighborhood alone.
90% of those stopped were neither given a summons nor arrested. In other words, they were innocent.
And for all these stops last year, you only recovered 8 guns.
Don't misunderstand us. We're not against police.
It's how you police.
The New York Times reported that the officers of the 44th Precinct use physical force far more often than the police do anywhere else in the city.
And we are the Morris Justice Project.
This is our home.
We live here.
3,920 stops?
For 8 guns?
Church buybacks do better. The Wall Street Journal reported that 85 weapons were recovered last Saturday in a gun buyback program held by Brooklyn Church. 85 guns in a single day.
This is our home.
We belong here.
Please don't treat us like we're strangers.
Of those who took our survey, 51% were asked to show their ideas in or just outside their buildings.
This is our home.
We go to school here.
Please don't assume we're criminals.
90% of us stopped by police last year were innocent.
This is our home.
We raise our kids here.
Please don't physically abuse them.
Last year, 50% of the police stops in our neighborhood involved some form of physical force.
This is our home.
We play here.
Please don't stop us without a good reason.
60% of those who took our survey were told to move by the police. This includes people standing in groups at the bus station, on the street corners, right outside their buildings, in the park, and in the subway. Where can we go?
This is our home.
We shop here.
Please don't tell us to move when we're not doing anything wrong.
67% of those who took our survey reported being stopped by the police last year.
This is our home.
We pray here.
Please treat us with dignity and respect.
Our survey revealed that too many of us were called racial and discarded names by police.
This is our home.
We care about our neighborhood.
We want to feel safe.
And we want you here.
Dear NYPD.
We are the Morris Justice Project.
We deserve fear and just policing.
And then the police came. The police came and shut us down.
Yes.
But in that, there was a conversation, and the police were defending themselves. We just learned from some people who were there, and we had a conversation. We showed some more films, and we had a Know Your Rights session, impromptu, in the little playground.
Yeah, so what you all just witnessed right there was an example of what we call sidewalk science. And sidewalk science is a way for us to bring our data back to the community, to have a conversation with the community. And sometimes sidewalk science is about educating the community, and other times it's about being educated by the community. And it's an open dialogue for us to understand some of the findings. And we bring our data back and we ask the community, does this make sense? Can you help us further understand what does 120 stops mean on this block? We're hearing that people want police or want to feel safe differently. What does safety look like for you? And on the walls is another example of sidewalk science where we're asking community to start thinking creatively and critically about like what does safety look like in their neighborhoods. Throughout the presentation, we'll give you more examples of how we engage community with sidewalk science, but just wanted to let you know that's one of the ways that not only do we learn, but we share conversations with the community. So real briefly, I want to give you guys a summary of like the Morris Justice Project, kind of like give you an understanding of who we are real fast, but like so you guys can have some context to the conversation for today. So we're a very big and diverse group. We range from age 16 to age 80. The project's been going on for 3 years. As Brett has already framed, we came together because in New York City, you know, we can probably zoom out and say in most of the cities, urban communities around the nation, aggressive policing is an issue. But more so, we understood that aggressive policing was going on in New York City, but we wanted to understand what it looks like in one small community. And that's how the Morris Justice Project came in conversation with folks in the Bronx. So we're a collection of community researchers, academic researchers, activists, lawyers, white people, black people, LGBTQ people, people from Israel, people from Harlem, people from Queens. You know, we come to the table around this issue from very different places. And we have very different positions around this issue. And, you know, we have great conversations, we have tough conversations, and together we created a survey that we thought best represented the way the community felt about the issue and what we thought would be the best way for us to understand the issue. And so today what we want to do, we want to kind of like bring this conversation up, and if I'm correct, I think, you know, we're not really presenting, so anytime you guys want to jump in, you guys can jump in and ask questions and start the dialogue. But we really want to break the conversation up into like who we are and like why we came together. We also want to talk about, you know, why did we create the survey? Why did we use the methodology that we used? And, you know, what was the message that we were trying to get across? Because I think from the beginning of the project, we had really 3 audiences that we wanted to talk to. We wanted to talk back to the Bronx community. We wanted to speak with the 40 blocks that the research took place in. For one, to really understand and get validation from the community that we were speaking to, but also to get a larger analysis, to have a community voice, a community understanding of the issue. Secondly, we want to speak back to the academic community. And thirdly, we're a part of like police reform going on in New York, so we want to be a part of those conversations that change how policies and practices are being implemented in New York City. So another thing we wanted to talk about is how we analyze the data. And Brent can talk about, all of us can talk about the thing we call stats in action, and other cool methodologies that we thought of on the fly and were really useful for us understanding how to engage community, how to understand this data as a collective. And then the last thing we want to talk about is, you know, we're a group of people who have stories, who have feelings, who are bright, who have knowledge, who comes from different places, and we just want to share with you how working with this project has, what it means for us and what it means to us personally, but also on a national scale. With that, I will pass it to our mothers, I will pass it to our mothers to kind of start off and explain how they get involved with the project.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jackie. I'm one of 3 mothers of the group. What had happened with us? What had? Name, Shepherd.
Born Gracie.
We are the 3 mothers. We live in a complex we call it the courtyard. You come in a gate, it's a gated area. So once you come in there, you know, the kids run around and they play inside the area. We have teenage sons. I have 2, Vaughn and Nadine have 1. All of them pretty much grew up together. So in this courtyard, they would sit and hang. We would come and get our chairs, and I would sit on my patio and deck. That's what I call it. And as we're sitting there, our kids was constantly being harassed by the police. they would come and stop them. We would go to the police officer and ask them, wait a minute, hold up, excuse me, that's my son. Patrol, when you see officer, tell me what did he do? Because I was in law enforcement. I used to be a correction officer in the 80s, state correction. So I've been on both sides. After we would ask them, they would tell us to step back, being rude to us. We'll let you know once we arrest your son and take him to the 44th precinct. In that meantime, we're getting together, jumping in a cab, trying to beat them at the precinct. We had a system that goes on in our courtyard that we had. The mothers of each of us knew each other. We had our phone numbers. If we would see our child being stopped by the police or against the wall, you get the phone call, you run downstairs. And sometimes this would happen back to back. I live on the fourth floor. Nadine is on the 5th, Fawn is on the 3rd. I look young, I'm not. So one of them steps and coming back down was kind of rough. You know, you go one time and you're back again. So, you know, sometimes you get sick and tired of being sick and tired of something going on and sitting in a group and you're talking about things that you don't like, that you want to have change. And a lot of people do that and some of them don't do anything about it. Happened at this time, we had an opportunity to do something instead of talking about it, who's going to be about it. My husband went through experience with the 44th precinct that gave me a chance to meet Chris Fabian, that's a lawyer. He said that if you're tired of what's going on and they've been investigating our area and seeing what's going on with the police and the people in the neighborhood, that he said he put us with the PSP, Project Public Science Project. Yes, see? We help each other out. So once we got together, we started, yeah, we want to take it from here. All right, y'all ladies want to say something?
Yeah. Sorry. All right, so yeah, so like all good stories, right, we have many beginnings. The beginning was Fawn, Nadine, and Jackie in the courtyard documenting what was going on with the young people with their sons and husbands and families and friends. And then another beginning was simultaneously Brett Stoudt, myself, Maddie Fox, Shell Fine, and some graduate students at the City University of New York, one of our other homes as our collective group. We have many homes. We had been doing research across the city looking at young people's experiences with criminal justice, with education, and with health. So a large survey that young people created with adults who work in those different sectors called Polling for Justice was created and went out to young people all across the 5 boroughs. That work revealed some really disturbing findings around young people's relationships to the police. Things that were not, sadly, huge surprises, but the depth of them, what were, the sort of the dramatic nature of them. And so Brett and I were really disturbed and wanted to think more about this and to think not only about these policies broadly, but how these policies, particularly policing policies, how they were impacting communities, right? But it wasn't just individuals being stopped, but whole communities were being sort of ravaged by these policies. So we also met in our work with Polling for Justice, communicating our findings, both with academics and activists. We came across Chris Fabian, the lawyer that was mentioned, and he became our matchmaker. He said, you know, you're doing that work, there's some women up in the Bronx. Jackie and Fawn actually have been involved in lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of some of these practices. You should meet them. So we went up and we met. Right? And then they introduced us to other folks. And then we hung out in the neighborhood. And after a certain amount of time, and here we are in our varied forms, we became what we've started to call a group of another kind, or a different kind. A family, rather, of a different kind. So we would meet, so this is you can see a picture of our flyer that we passed out all around the neighborhood. Basically, we hung out, walked the blocks, hung out in the basketball courts and laundromats, and hung out barbershops and stores, introducing restaurants, yeah, introducing ourselves, saying who we were. At this point, it was Brett and I and a couple of graduate students from the City University of New York. Talking about the work that we've done and what our concerns were, where we wanted to go. And very shortly afterwards, a group gathered. It was kind of like an open house at the local library. And the local library then became another home, and we ended up working there pretty much every other Saturday, Wednesday, for what we thought would be maybe 6 weeks, and has now turned into 3.5 years. So, in those early meetings, right, when I said we were a family of a different kind, Jackie once recently said, you know, when we started out, we were nothing to each other. There were no relations between us.
No, it wasn't. It was no relation.
But there certainly was a lot of connective tissue, right? So there were, between us, there were connective tissue that defined our differential and independent, or rather interdependent, not independent, but interdependent, so between us, our relationships to power, to privilege, to vulnerability, right? Those were all in operation all the time. But really what stands out among us is that we purposefully use those differences in our collective to build our own, well, our family, yes, but to build knowledge throughout our research process, right? So our varied standpoints were really crucial to us so that we could really dig into policing and how we each had differentially experienced it and how it was being played out in this neighborhood. So among us, we created what I would call a participatory contact zone, okay? We can unpack that later for those who want to. But it was really important that we brought our full selves to the research table, right? At no point did any one of us erase ourselves, right? We brought our academic selves, we brought our mother selves. I'm also a mother, even though I don't live in the South Bronx. We brought ourselves who had been victims and harassed regularly by the police, and we brought ourselves that had not experienced that very much in our lives, right? So all of those, and you can lay out all the differences you can imagine, all of that was constantly informing our theorizing, the methods we were choosing, and the process and our analysis of the work. All right, so where are we? In the early, and I should be fast forwarding a little bit. So when we first came together, we needed to understand what is the neighborhood. You know, we talk about community as if it's a thing, right? And it is a thing, and it's also a fiction. So for us, we had to define what is this community? If you live in the neighborhood, where are you living? And very quickly, we chalked up a Google map, and we decided it was between 161st Street and 167th, from just past the Grand Concourse on Sheridan Avenue all the way to Park, right? Basically, it was like main thoroughfares and a commuter rail line that cut off this, or that determined what the neighborhood was. We worked a lot with maps, as you're going to see. Maps became a fundamental tool for us, and we started to talk about like where in the neighborhood we felt safe, where our favorite beauty parlors were, where the best restaurants were, where we avoided, where the police always had their towers. We talked about all these things as we were getting to know the neighborhood and define it and the geography. We also talked about policing writ large, right? What is the music of policing? Right? We're in the Bronx, the birthplace of hip-hop. We spent time thinking about the songs that had informed our own understanding of the police, our own education of the police. We had this vision we would create a mixtape that got as far as a CD that we passed among ourselves, but there's still some possibility. What else do we do? So then, from there, and we started talking and sharing our own stories, starting from our own lived experiences of policing, right? And how different they were and how similar they were, and to start to analyze and theorize from them. Our stories, the stories of our friends and families, and then also looking at police data to juxtapose our own experiences with what was happening across the city. And from there we started to clarify what our research questions were, right? We came together knowing we wanted to do something around policing, and we wanted to produce data that would speak back to the rhetoric that was coming from City Hall, that we needed this type of policing because crime was up and we needed to get guns off the street. So we wanted to engage that conversation. What we settled on are what are the experiences with and attitudes towards police in a 42-block area east of Yankee Stadium in the Bronx.
So, the debate in the city at the time was largely around numbers. And so we're multi-method researchers, we do qualitative and quantitative work, we use maps, we do performance, but we wanted to strategize and co-opt the power of numbers, fully understanding what those powers were, to build a survey, know something about the neighborhood, and then speak those numbers and use that power back to the NYPD and other people. And so through this process that Maria was describing, we used CDs, the songs that informed us. We had discussions about the neighborhood, our own lives, what it means to live in the neighborhood, and it was just kind of like a long discussion over a number of weeks. And then finally, we brought back a list of the themes that we started hearing on the left-hand side. So we hear a lot of stuff about attitude towards neighborhood. We hear a lot about police presence at the wrong time. We hear a lot about the history of neighborhood crime. So we just brought a worksheet and said, so all the stuff we've been doing, this seems to be what's coming up. And we discussed it, and we added to it, and we ripped it apart, and we combined some things. Then after some time, we brought back once we agreed on the sections, the themes, the things that we would want to speak to our neighbors about in the 42 blocks that Maria just described. Then we went section by section. And you can see, I pulled out there with the arrow, police presence at the wrong time. Okay, so if this is a theme, then what are the kinds of things that we should be asking your neighbors? And at this point, we're not trying to get great questions for a survey. That's not the issue. We're trying to get the content, you see. So we need to be addressing around when not needed, or harass kids, or police are scared of residents. And it's not just negative stuff. There was a lot of positive sort of items on the survey as well. But through these iterations, we ultimately ended up coming up with some draft of a survey that was entirely sort of grounded from the conversations that we were having over several weeks. And as you'll notice about our methodology, it's purposely an oscillation. So we work in our groups, we work in our small group, and then we find an advisory group where we speak out and we test what we thought about in our group. Since we're only a small part of the community, we test out to a larger part of the community. So we're always testing our ideas out. So the first moment of that was taking our survey and then getting clergymen and folks, community org folks, young people, to Yankees Tavern, where Babe Ruth had a drink, famous tavern near Yankee Stadium. We got the back room and we just sat around and we showed them our draft of the survey and said, tell us what's wrong. Tell us what's right. What needs to change? And we have a lot of expertise here. Expertise, situated expertise about surveys, expertise of the law. And we thought, from a legal perspective, on the left-hand side, we thought questions about if you were stopped and arrested, or you were stopped and you got a summons, how would you navigate through the criminal justice system? There are ways of doing that, and what are the consequences? We thought this would be a great way of measuring that. And everyone in the advisory group said, absolutely not. If you're going to talk to someone on the blocks, they will not spend the time to go through that long diagram, even though we were proud. So these sorts of moments where, again, like the challenges and obstacles, we spent that, up to that point, it probably was 21 drafts between us. And then we were really proud of that. And they said, look, if you really want the data on the street, people are going to take the time, they're never going to fill it out. We had to fix it. Right? You want to...
So, this is where I come in at. During the course of the survey, I actually met them when they had one of these drafts of the survey. And they stopped me on the street and asked me, hey, would you like to fill this out? And they started to talk to me. And as I'm going through the survey, I'm wondering, what type of information are they really looking for? Are they looking for what's really happening in the so-called hood, or they just want something to take back to teach to their students? And that's when I come to find out that they really want the real information. So I said, I tell you what, I'll fill out the survey. And then another one of the representatives said, well, why don't you meet with us so we can get some of the real information on what's going on in the Bronx? And then I said, okay, sure, why not? We set a date, we met, and I'm still here. We started meeting with people in the community, in the daytime, the evening, nighttime. Sometimes I was a little nervous for them being in the hood. But we worked it out. So we did the surveys, we brought back the information, and even after we brought it back and we started going through it, we realized that there's still some things missing here. Okay, we got the information, we know what's going on. How do we help them? How do we change the situation? Because it's one thing to get the information and hold on to it. It's another thing to bring change to the community. So we decided that, okay, let's ask them what do they need, what do they want? How can we stop some of the violence? Because we know there is actual violence going on. And like we said earlier, we really want the police to be there. We want them there. It's not like we want to just get rid of all police, because we know they're good police and there's the ones who go above and beyond and harass. So we're trying to get rid of those particular police. We understand that without the police, then everything would just run amok. So it's not like we're against the police, we want them. So I did a little research independently and from the Morris Justice Projects just to make sure that I knew what I was doing and what I was getting into. And the statistics that the police have are completely different compared to the statistics that we actually went into the neighborhoods and got from the people who are being harassed. Very big difference. So in saying that, we came up with another draft, and this time we even translated it into Spanish because we didn't want to leave anybody out. Anybody. So we went back out in the community in the cold, in the snow, in the rain, all type of weather, and we went back out and we continued giving out the survey. We continued having conversations, not just fill out the survey when you finish, give it back to us. Having in-depth conversations with people who were working, people who were standing on the corner, people who lived in the community, people who had never been harassed before by the police. However, their sons and daughters are targets now. So in doing so, we got a lot of good information. In getting that information, we came back, we discussed it, and we decided that we're going to actually give back. Figure out how to give back to each and every, well, not each and every person, but each and every one of those 42 blocks. How do we go about doing that? So we decided that we're going to actually come out and speak to the people, which the sidewalk science. I keep messing it up, sidewalk science. And this is the big founder of the sidewalk science. That's like his baby. Showing them the statistics, the illuminator, putting it on the wall so that they can see. Each one of these pictures was taken by the people in the community, as you can see on the sides of the wall, in order to let them have a voice. We couldn't bring all of them here, but technically they're here. So it's more than just what you see here. There's a lot of people behind here that just hiding right now that you don't see, but they're here with us. So in doing so, we are now trying to figure out how do we continue to figure out how to work this out to give back, to help, to show them that their time and effort and standing in the cold and in the rain and we holding umbrellas over there while they filling out these surveys was not just like a waste of time. Or not just a bunch of people coming in, getting the information, and then running off with it and leaving the community the same way.
And for me, I was in the library. Like, that's all I did. Go to the library and get on Facebook. Just check out music. Meanwhile, go back to the hood, get harassed by cops. To hear me tell it to grown folks, they would only say, oh, I have to be doing something if I'm getting stopped often. And I mean, every day, every day. So I see a flyer for a Know Your Rights meeting. I come to it, and while initially I didn't agree with the message, I agreed with the people and what else, like what they was trying to establish. And to me, it was that there is a problem, it needs to be fixed, and it's one thing for me to just be, you know, on Facebook all day, and then talking about, oh, I gotta go through this, and my life is so all messed up and all of that. And there's another thing to actually be out there, handing out surveys, talking to the people, getting information back. And at first, you know, I missed the Illumination show. Like, I hate that. I hate it. But, you know, they kept calling. We having a meeting. Come down. Come down. And, you know, slowly but surely I started to make more meetings. More meetings. More meetings. Started to meet with people. We started to compare notes. I started to feel like I was doing something. Stopped going to the library altogether. Started writing, thinking about going to school, working with people, you know, and I went.
I lived in the courtyard with Jackie and Nadine where they lived, but I moved to Jersey because my son was harassed so much. I was in the courthouse just about, it's not 7 days they open, but I felt like I was there 7 days. It had to be about 20 or more times within 1 year at the courthouse with my son. Till I had got to a point where I was running up and down the steps, at least 5 to 6 times a day, because they got the kids up against the wall. Not only my son I'm running down for, whoever child was out there, and I know they didn't do nothing. I'm down in that courtyard behind, calling Jackie, calling Nadine, come downstairs, they got your son up against the wall. But it had got to a point to where they had came to my house and knocked on the door for my son to speak to him. I said, sure, come in. Okay, they said they need to take him down to the precinct to speak to him. No problem. I called his lawyer because he had a lawyer at that time. They took him to the precinct. We waited 5 hours. I'm outside. Nadine was with me. The lawyer called and said, they got your son for 6 counts of attempted murder. I said, oh yeah? Okay. The lawyer looked and looked. Kept him at one precinct for 5 hours. Another precinct picked him up from there, took him to another precinct. The 44th precinct. They kept him there for 8 hours in the back room with mess and doo-doo and stuff in the floor, cut the lights out on him. He called him, can I have some water? They said, no. Your lawyer said, don't say nothing to you. Never gave him no water. Took him to the courthouse. Happily, my cousin works in the courthouse. She happened to be working that night. So I looked, I said, please come outside. I texted her and told her to come outside. I said, they got my son in here for 6 counts of attempted murder. She said, what? I said, yeah. She said, wait, just stay out here. Let me go look on the computer. Nothing on the computer was 6 counts of attempted murder. I said, no, go look again. Maybe you just went past his name, because that's what they told me. She went and looked again. She said, no, there's no 6 counts of attempted murder. I don't see it. When he went and was presented in front of the judge, they said disorderly conduct. 36 hours they held my son. 36 hours. It was in the newspaper too. He's never was charged with. My son never been arrested for a gun. Never had a gun on him. But that's how that went. After that, I said, no, it's time for me to move. Because I think they trying to railroad me and my son. We got to get out of here. They called me problematic mother. That's what the police called me. You know? But it had got to a point to where not only my son was being harassed, I was being harassed also. They ride by, hey, Miss Gracie! You know, being sarcastic. But after that, I said, no, it's time for me to relocate. I moved to Jersey for a year. I kept every meeting they had. I came from Jersey to meet this meeting, because these are my family right here. You know? But I did it. You know, I didn't have a problem in doing it either. You know? I moved back to New York. I'm back in New York again. But it's rough. It's rough. You know, I had a lot of tears. I cried a lot. You know, I laughed a lot with my friend. But I had a lot of support from them, you know, especially Jackie. Sometimes I get a little teary-eyed because I've been through so much with the police and my son, to where they had stressed me so bad I had lost so much weight. I was in the hospital for 2 days. That was because I was dehydrated and stressed out. I wasn't eating or nothing. But I'm back, you know. They may have ran me out, but I'm back. I'm going to get it out.
Okay, so you can see we're passionate about this issue, and many of us are living it. Just to recap some of what was said and put it in the context of the work that we were doing. The survey that was created used maps and included both, as Anthony alluded to and Paul alluded to. It's hard to pull apart action and research for us. Our survey that we created also had a resource list so that they would give us some of their information and we would give information back to them. We handed out the survey at the library, but we also had a Know Your Rights workshop so that we gave something and they gave something, and that's how both Anthony and Paul met us. You can see on the right-hand side, the survey on the left, the resource on the right. Sorry, it's got stuck. I'm looking for the way we sampled the neighborhood, since we decided it was 42 blocks, is we cut the 42 blocks into 20 smaller sections, then took all the housing, randomly chose one spot, and parked our roving sort of survey machine right there. We had clipboards, we had pencils, and we all scattered the area that we were doing that day. So we systematically went around the neighborhood so that we could get the grandmother on the 6th floor and the young people on the blocks. And in a matter of 3 months, we got over 1,000 surveys. Actually, it was 1,030.
And to be clear, our survey machine consisted of a rolly suitcase, and all of us, and then people who would take the survey. Paul's not the only one. There are other folks who took the survey and then wanted to help us, and so joined us for a couple days here and there.
That's by design. So you heard that we didn't all start out at the same time. The idea is that our group is open and grows as people become interested, as they can help us in building a new survey or doing the focus groups that we did, as Paul and others alluded to.
Is that like a guard tower?
That's through Coyle surveillance at its literal. Yeah. Nadine said that's by our
home. We have towers.
Just move around and put them up?
Yeah, and they stand there, they put them up, and they stay there for like 4 and 5 days.
They stand up in there with the binoculars?
Yeah, they come down, they eat, they go back up.
So, and just someone said that's like Palestine. We have a member of our group who's not here and not Manoff, and she's actually lives in, or grew up in Israel and Palestine. And she, several times, even as she was trying to figure out how she could, what it meant for her to be working in this group when she wasn't from the Bronx and was from so far away, it turned out actually that a lot of analyses that she brings in had been echoed in the blocks themselves, both by people when we were doing feedback sessions and walking the blocks after we had done. You'll see a community level analysis that we engaged in where we took the survey back and said, hey, 47% of your neighbors feel like people are stopped innocently, and yet 57% of them want the police, in the neighborhood, even though they don't feel it's connected to dropping crime. At any rate, she, so the people, the sort of reverberation of the different kinds of analyses that folks were bringing in, not disconnected from those towers. Also, just to complicate community a little bit, right? It was fantastic that folks taking the survey, living in the blocks, were then joining us. But it wasn't always so clear-cut that like created immediate trust, right? Zinnia, one young woman who joined us like that, she used to wear hair very severely back with dark glasses, right? Shades, dark sunglasses. And several times we were like, who's she? Is she a cop? She lived right next to the library, was from the community and, a neighbor, but just to keep things complicated, right?
So we're going to go through this. We're going to go through this quickly. But parts that are not often spoken about when we think about participatory action research or community engaged research. We'll go through some of the points, and if we want to talk about it more, we can at another time. The preparing the data. This is whether you're doing PAR work or just traditional quantitative work. You rarely hear about this, but it's really important. Because we collected 1,030 surveys, and then we have to enter them into an SPSS program, or that's the program that we used, and that, as everything else in this project, was participatory. Prakriti helped. She would come to the graduate center. We had another team. They would enter the data, and because it was a community or deeply community-led data, people really wanted us to understand what they were saying. And so 20% of the surveys had things written on it, things crossed out, more comments. There was a lot to be analyzed, and if we were just purely quantitative researchers, we might forget about that. That would be noise, but we ended up analyzing this. So we then realized that we had to have one bin, we call it binning, one bin just for those surveys. Right? And sometimes we ask for numbers like how many times have you heard a gunshot? And it was impossible to come up with a number. Some things can't be quantified. We heard a zillion, we heard too many, right? Though it can't be quantified. It's giving us a great deal of information. So as qualitative researchers, we put that into a bin. Sometimes we weren't sure if we could trust it. Someone said they were stopped 150 times. Can we trust this? We had another bin that involved, take this back to the group and let's discuss it, right? Everything was participatory in this part. We had another aspect is that this, when you think about quantitative data, you take variables and you cut them into variables, you separate them independently. This is the moment where you get to hear someone and what they were saying, and like as if you're interviewing them, from the moment they fill it out until the end. Huge amount of data. So we would meet as a team and say, so you're entering this data, what are you learning? Right? Can we trust what's saying? Does that make sense? Like, what are people saying at the end versus the people who enter the data have an enormous amount of information, just like when you do qualitative transcription. So we used that. And Prakriti, this was one of your favorite. This and the quantitative analyses that she learned to do was one of her favorite. Do you want to mention some of that?
I'm not really good at speaking, so I wasn't really into the survey taking part, but some of us are really good at. So when I got to be in that room and just look at every single answer and go through, and I sort of was skeptical about, are people taking these questions seriously? And when I sat in that room, just went through the 1,000 survey, I was like, this is important to them and us. So I think it really put me in the perspective that it works. We did something right. So, yeah.
And then once we have the data, we do what we call stats in action, and it's a real validity issue. So quantitative work can be used as a gatekeeper. No matter what kind of work you're doing, you either know how to do it or it's hard to really engage with it. So we work extra hard to figure out how we can analyze the numbers together. And we do this in a number of lots of activities that we have decided. One thing is to just use the survey and print out all the percentages so that we made up the items so we can go through it quickly and learn just on a descriptive level. But then we do an iterative form based on sort of John Tukey exploratory data analysis grounded theory, where someone realizes, okay, we're speaking to 1,030 people, neighbors, but that doesn't look right. What if we broke it down 21 and younger and 21 and older? And so we do it right there, and it becomes an interactive, and it's a very powerful experience to realize that you can have a theory and then we test it out. We also do the items themselves. There's lots of items, and conceptually, like a factor analysis, they are physical violence or violence or police contact around a building, right? So we would take the items and in a thematic way organize them by content. And then that becomes the new quantitative variable that we would analyze. And you can see us doing that activity right there. And it's amazing how many different ways you can thematically understand the items in our survey by our group. We also did the same type of thematic analysis with these photos.
And the community safety pictures actually came organically through the process of doing the sidewalk science. So initially we didn't have this vision. We did ask people in the community in an open-ended way their thoughts and opinions and attitudes about their community and the neighborhood, things that they wish were different, things that they would like to see stay the same. We didn't want to just be documenting damage, right, that the police was creating, even though we could argue they were creating a lot of damage. Not damage, but a lot of injustice. But we also wanted to recognize that this is a functional, vibrant neighborhood that people felt very connected to. And we wanted the survey to be able to reflect that, right? And then also reflect the visions that people had for their neighborhoods. And to be able to hold that in juxtaposition with each other. In that same vein, that same spirit or vibe, the community safety pictures emerged. We would be on the street talking about the work, taking folks through like a little storyboard of the whole project, showing them the maps, helping them locate themselves on the blocks. Once we had a map that showed how many blocks, how many stops per block had happened in the last year, right? So helping them find themselves in the number, helping them see their neighbors, so creating what María would call a social mirror with the social science data that we've all been gathering. But then the conversation would also be, the issue of community safety. So what keeps us safe? If it's not this kind of policing, is it police at all? What other kinds of things keep this a safe community? Recognizing that it is in this neighborhood, right? And so that's what, as Corey mentioned earlier, that's what those were. And then we use that as data. We realized, oh my God, we have all this data about what people are saying, you know, are sometimes alternatives, or sometimes different alternatives to policing, and sometimes are alternative policing strategies.
We also had a number of open-ended questions that naturally came out of our discussions in the survey, and one was, what would you like to ask or say to the NYPD in your neighborhood? 800 of the 1,000 people who took our survey filled that out, but it's hard to read through all 800 and have the discussion, have the analysis, so we micro-coded them, very small codes, and then we did this sort of game that McCready helped us with, where they were all put in the themes, and then quotes that represented the themes, and then we organized them thematically. Oh yeah.
So this is another of those, like, what could have maybe be described as what went wrong, but actually gave us huge insight into the methods that we were creating. Does anybody want to speak on the joy of microcoding?
I think I want to start here because I was the one who actually sat there and looked at all 832 responses and made up this card, like cut them out by hand, by myself, in the office. So,
and for each of us, not just 800, but 800 times 9, 12, 15.
12 copies. So, and I think when we took the 800, and I have about 130 here, we took it down to, I think me and Brett, we were trying to narrow it down to the least. And we were very proud of this 130 out of the 800. So we were like, yeah, this was good, we got this. And then we took it to the group, gave it out, and then I think I'll let Jack.
And I should just say, but
you tell them what I
so these, no, I'm not going to, you're going to do it, but to preface what Jackie will probably say, we had been doing this kind of coding and analyzing already on different parts of the survey data, right? So we had done it with as a whole group. We did it as a whole group with the community safety pictures. We did it with other responses to the open-ended questions. So we were kind of on a roll, right? Then McCready came up with these packets for us. Go ahead, Jack.
We met at the tavern. When we left, we had homework. That stack, each and every one of us. When we meet again, having in different sections. When I got home, I didn't do it that night. It was homework, I had a week. 3 days before I laid it out on the table, I had no space for all of them. I decided to text Maria, we're gonna have to do this as a group. I'm not able to do this by myself. You can call the rest of them, and I think they all agree with me. I knew they did. So that's pretty much on there as the text that I sent her. It's not happening. But that's part of the things that we went through. Yes, and we did get together at the Bronx Defenders. About 2 weeks later, got together and broke it down. But it took us hours to do that. Just imagine by yourself.
So a couple of things, right? So one is that we keep hearing we met at the tavern, right? We started out meeting at the library. There's an extremely cool librarian that gave us a lot of space. Space where you can gather together is at an extraordinary premium in the neighborhood, right? Which is actually one of our findings. There aren't really places that people can really come together. But this librarian gave us incredible access. She then moved jobs, right? So this last year has been really hard for us. And a lot of our meeting times are dictated about when we can get space. So we've been meeting a lot at the Yankee Tavern. Sometimes great, you get a beer while you're working, meeting. Sometimes not so great. When there's a Yankee game, or all of a sudden it's karaoke night. Right? Challenges. The Bronx Defenders is a community group nearby us. Those fantastic group of activist lawyers. They will often give us their space. So sometimes we meet there. And it was particularly great for these big analysis that we use all their tables, right? Other thing to point out just quickly is that when Jackie texted and said, you know, this ain't happening, it was really key for us, and particularly for me, it was a moment where I was like, you know, participation in our group is also becoming a methodology, right? This is sort of like, for me, a contact methodology, that it was crucial for all of us to be in the same space. I actually disagree with Jackie. I think individually, we all could have done it. We had the capacity.
Probably so.
We had the capacity, but there was something that was stopping us, right? And maybe alone we would have only gotten so far. But what's interesting across our work and across our analysis sessions in particular is that when we're doing it and we're saying, oh really, you put that there because I'm putting it over here, right? Which is part of the analysis process. Those debates then push each other, push us, right, to keep analyzing, keep theorizing as we're going. And that actually, the sort of participatory nature, it's not just that we're all doing it together because it's nice, right? It's really actually moving our work theoretically to whole new places.
So our methods are fundamentally participatory. And one thing, as I mentioned, our methods are also oscillating. So we came up with a pretty good story based on all the methods that we had, all the data we collected. But then we did what we call community analysis, which is we came up with 4 big questions that we wanted to ask community members in the 42 blocks. And the data that represented those questions. And we just went out in groups and said, hey, can we have 2 minutes? We did this survey in our neighborhood. What do you think? Help us understand this. So this is not about as much as us communicating the numbers back, although it was a little bit. It was sincerely asking members of the community to help us analyze. It wasn't always so simple. Some said they wanted more police, some said they wanted less. How do you interpret this? And people took that seriously. It helped with our final analyses of one version. Another thing is that the NYPD data is available. So we had our version, the NYPD had their version, and we analyzed that together. We reanalyzed, reframed the NYPD analysis, and we broke it down then by block to block so that we could see exactly how many stops in our area, how many guns, how much physical violence. And we ended up getting more and more sophisticated around this so we could be very clear where the hot spots were in the neighborhood and then find out what people thought about it. There's police data. And we have ours, and we map both of them. And then it's really important, with this type of work, it often is compared to what? And I live in the East Village, and there were conversations when I would speak about not knowing my neighbors, and everyone, Jackie, Nadine, Fawn, they all know their neighbors. When I don't see police in my neighborhood and they see police. So the East Village became an important juxtaposition for us, and so we did a comparison to say, look, you get more drugs near NYU, but half the stops, right? You get the same amount of guns, right? So that we could really see the injustice when you looked at it compared to what. We're not going to go through the findings, you can imagine what they are, but there are some of them. And then Maria's going to, along with all of us, we'll talk about the action part of our work, and then we only have about 5 or so minutes, and then we'll take questions.
So, and actually the findings, the findings are well, you've heard some of them that were incorporated into the Dear NYPD event, and then we have some back-to-back report that you'll hear about in a second. Right, so this was all of the work that we tried to infuse with things, work with activists in the city who are also working around the police reform movement. There was a lot of Know Your Rights workshops. Some of our members were trained in Know Your Rights. This was the flyer in the event actually that brought Anthony to us, so we included this here. The tricky thing about Know Your Rights, we can talk about this later, is it's really hard to enact your rights when a police officer is pushing your face down into the ground. Right? So when Anthony was talking about, like, we just kind of disagree with fundamentalists. Anyway, those are important conversations to have. This is not the first gymnasium that we've spoken in. No offense. Although maybe the best one. We also did a town hall meeting. We were very lucky that there was a mayoral race happening, right, shortly after we got started. We were very keen to be able to enter that conversation. And so we just prior to sort of the mayoral campaigns really kicking up, we had been wanting to take some of our findings and start to produce materials that would move to the neighborhood, right? The Illuminator event actually came very early for us. It could be, again, a what went wrong, and instead it turned out to be probably the most phenomenal opportunity that we have ever come across, right? That group wanted to give us a 2-week notice to come up with something that we could project onto a building of our choosing, right? So we ran with it. But now we had, it was early in our analysis when we did that. Now we had data that we really wanted to share. We talked about making, remember, a community newspaper, big signs, we had all different things, right? All different kinds of things. We settled on, and this is their courtyards to like the whole neighborhood, right? To give them context. And we created shirts. These are two sort of quotes from the qualitative data. Paul sort of alluded to in the survey. We also did some interviews and focus groups as there was other information we wanted to sort of dig into. And why do I put the description, and it's not a crime to be who you are, were two phrases that sort of came up in those that really resonated with people. As I said earlier, Jackie and Fawn are involved in a court case, a very large court case called the Lagone trial that is questioning the constitutionality of vertical policing, right? So there were 3 trials that were happening at the same time as the mayor's race was going on. We took full advantage of all of them. We had a graduate student who sat in the trial of the Floyd trial, which is sort of the largest of the 3. She sat there every day, took notes. At night, would write a blog post that we had on a Tumblr account that then folks in the Bronx printed out and passed out to people who couldn't make it to the courthouse. We participated with all the other activists in trying to stuff the courthouse, and Nadine and others came down, Recruiting came down to watch the session where things are being debated. That's us there, right? Yes, so here we are, right outside the courtyard house, with our signs, with our statistics, participating in demonstrations. One thing that was you'll notice there's a lot of pride in this work, right? We have pride in our survey, and then they tell us that it doesn't work. We have pride in our cards. So another moment of our pride was that we were at a demonstration right in front of City Hall. These are the 2 City Council members who sponsored what was the Community Safety Act, a piece of legislation that would give police oversight, right? Something we have not had in New York City, independent police oversight, and then also would make it illegal or would ban profiling. And so these 2 legislators were making their pitch as the trial was happening and as the Community Safety Act was going up for a vote. I think it was actually there was a second vote because our mayor Bloomberg had vetoed it, or not vetoed it, vetoed it. Yeah. So at one point, Councilmember Brad Lander goes to speak, and he turns around and he grabs our sign. Right, it's on fact, he folds it up, and he frames his remark all around our data. We were very proud of that moment. And then you asked about de Blasio. So this is the new police commissioner, Bratton. He actually was, he's an old commissioner who was known for creating these broken window policies that we're now living, right? So, not that he created broken windows, but we took that theory and ran with it in New York City and started policies that are now happening all over the place. So it's kind of a tricky move that de Blasio, our new mayor, who was very progressive, we had a lot of hope around. Anyways, we were very, very fortunate. Before Commissioner Bratton came into power, really, into his position, he was having these quiet conversations with community members, meeting with activists who had been really fighting against stop and frisk. He met with a group at one point of 20 people, and we were fortunate enough to get a seat at that table. And so Jackie represented us at that meeting, and she can tell you about it. But Brett and I were so excited that we met her right afterwards. And so when they were coming out, the press was interviewing Brett, and Jackie made her out real fast to say that. We're over time, so I'm just going to zoom through to give you some images, and then maybe we can have a couple of questions, and we can just talk throughout the day. But in our efforts, again, to mobilize the conversation in the neighborhood, right, to take the data, which is really the data of the neighborhood, and to use it so that folks in the neighborhood use that data as they wanted to. And then also, as you saw, we wanted to engage the neighborhood, we wanted to Brett made. It's phenomenal, that shows all of the stops in 2011, and it shows them, and you press play, it's like, I don't know, 3 minutes or something, and it starts to pop up, right? And you start to see the scars of these stops, right? In real time over a year. It's really, really great use of data. All right. These are scenes of the sidewalk signs. So we did chalking. Juan is the expert in the chalking department. Taking the data, putting it on us all over the place. Here's the community safety pictures. They're on the walls. Yes, you put them on gates. And then, as we're doing here, we sort of recognize, right, that we have many homes. That the Morris Justice neighborhood is one of our primary homes in our group, right? But we live in lots of spaces, and actually some of us can have multiple homes. Maybe not multiple apartments and physical buildings, but we have homes in many communities. And Brett and I and Corey represent the City University of New York, and we live, one of our homes is an academic home. And so when we started out with most of our emphasis really in our home in the Bronx, and trying to push our way into other homes down at City Hall. But recently, in the last, I don't know, 6, 8 months, 10 months, we started moving into academic homes and doing presentations at conferences and sharing our data in more academic spaces. And so coming here has really been a phenomenal opportunity.
And also, we made a point. The academic world and speak to the community because that was what was urgent. So now we're speaking to the academic world and doing it together, writing together, which is an analysis in and of itself, and it's bringing up new things.
Is there an end to the story? I guess one of the things I'm looking to hear is that there's been a reduction in the number of stops and that the interaction between the community members and the police has improved.
The stops are down to 150,000. The stops are down to 150,000 from 700,000. Oh, the question was, is there an end to this story?
No.
Yeah, no. The stops are down, but Brad has put in a new focus on broken windows policing, focusing on homeless people on benches in the subway, talking about drones and predictive policing. So as these things go, they keep going on, but stops are down. And we had a lot of wins. The Community Safety Act has come through, but there's been some legal stalls. The Floyd case, the Langone case, they all won in our favor, but they've been stalled. So we're about to hit a new era, but it hasn't gotten there yet.
Right. Wait, before we hit another question, one is that also we recognize that stop and frisk in and of itself was just a continuation of a legacy of, really of incarcerating and criminalizing Black and brown bodies that have been happening in the United States since its inception, right? So, what will the new face be is a question that's open for us. I just want to do a little commercial break from Brian.
Sorry, folks. And I was waiting for the natural break until we went into question and answer, but that didn't happen. So we do want to have some time for question and answer. So we're actually going to push the next start time for the session from starting at 11:15 or starting from 11 to 11:15. And it doesn't take more than 10 minutes to get to any of the spaces that we need to get to. So we'll have time for question and answer. All right, thanks.
You use the mic.
So you get the full time.
Questions, talk to us.
Money. How'd you get a lot of stuff paid for? Can you repeat the question?
How was it paid?
Y'all know the money, but I want to tell other people.
There's two things. One, Maria and I had written a couple of grants, small grants, that started it off. And then Maria is the director of the Public Science Project, which does things to generate some income. And so through that combination and really cheap methods, everything that we've done is on the cheap. And so we're able to just a lot of sweat equity and a lot of cheap methods. And with technology, you can do nearly anything. And then a couple of small grants. in the printer room, you know, the community has a printing house, you know, like we
work a lot in solidarity, not just among us, but with anybody who has any kind of resources. So we printed those, somebody said, this is expensive though. We printed those in-house, and actually the fabulous guy used to do stuff for us all the time at the last second, just retired. And so now we have a new person that is not as easy to, but all of us, whether no matter where you're living, there are folks who have access to things and skills, and those can be leveraged if we're working in solidarity, right? And there's always cracks to exploit. So if you get a printer who likes the content of what you're printing, you know, then keep being good to him and he'll be good to you, and that's kind of how we work. But I just want to say something about how our funding, actually Jack said something about how our funding works. It is complicated. It came up in a session yesterday. A lot of what we're doing doesn't really match the way universities are set up, right? We've been running this off of very, very little money. But the way we can access that money is very difficult. Or not difficult, it's just not designed to be doing what we're doing. Most of us come together, or rather, from the inception, as a way of just to acknowledge the time that people are putting in. People get small stipends, hourly stipends for working on the project. But where we draw our money from is not designed to create like paychecks, right? We can't get regular money. It has to be, we have these waiting periods. You know, we have to amass a certain amount of money in order to make a request. There's all kinds of ways where we're bringing together systems that don't exist together, right? And don't normally work as a unit, and then so we're having to reinvent. And sometimes that works all right, and then other times things break down, right? So here's a story of where that was sort of inspired by not only about money, where things kind of broke down.
Well, one of the statements that y'all had, what went wrong? I wouldn't say this went wrong. It was just a learning experience for us, getting to know each other and working together. But after we got together and we composed our name, got the survey together, and we were meeting at the library, it had been a moment that they were saying, yeah, well, we might get a stipend or a grant or some money towards starting another group in another borough in Brooklyn. So we like, yeah, that's good. After a while, there was no phone calls, there was no text, and I'm like, whoa, they must have got that grant. They didn't call us back. So later on, let's say maybe a month later, we had a meeting in the library again. So, you know, I'm kind of shy. So I stood up and I had to speak what I felt. And I said, man, I got to tell you something. The whole time I thought you got the grant, you forgot all about us, you went on about your business. It was a miscommunication there. So from that day on, like I say, that's nothing that went wrong. I feel like it was a learning experience for us. But from that day on, we became a family. The man here is my baby daddy. The Morris Project, that made him hold his head up. The Morris Justice Project is our baby. So that experience, it didn't go wrong, it went right. So sometimes what goes wrong could benefit you in the long run. So, yeah.
Beautiful question.
Morris is the avenue that the library is on. That's an avenue where our kids stand on the corner and sometimes we stop by the police department. So it's an avenue in the Bronx where the library is at.
We have a question right here.
So part of why I'm reporting in detail, I've done similar work like this in Detroit and where I am now in Milwaukee. In Milwaukee, I'm working with 4 different neighborhoods. We're working with young people, and I'm trying to cycle the work back to the district of Northeast Detroit, where I'm born and raised, where we did similar work. We did a housing survey, and there's been some issues with that. So I would like to talk to you about that later. But I'm so grateful that all of you came. My question is about how you brought up about Commissioner Bratton and how he's doing all these different things. That makes me think about he's chasing money for the department where the mayor's chasing money and funneling it in. 2 of the neighborhoods I'm working in Milwaukee have a Department of Justice grant called Building Neighborhood Capacity. And so they're at the end of this grant, and they're trying to do revitalization planning around safety after the grant ends. So what I'm thinking about funding, but I'm thinking about being strategic. And so I'm like, how is this group planning to be proactive? You have all this knowledge now. You have all this ownership now. How are you being proactive beyond, this is amazing work, but how are you thinking of taking it to the next level beyond police brutality to other issues of kind of fighting back with the mayor and the commissioner, the policies and the infrastructure that they're creating that's substantiating this mass incarceration and this profiling and all this that so many of these other neighborhoods are dealing with?
Well, I know y'all seeing me, but okay. It's been in our neighborhood, and we did the 41 block radius. It's not only are we doing it for stop and frisk, we also involve now the schools, the young people in our neighborhood. The reason that they are being stopped is nowhere for them to go. You can't sit in the park because dusk to dawn. So what is dawn? We don't know. They've been put out. You can't stand in front of your building because they're telling you to go to your homes. We have landlords also that, you know, the area that we're in is moving on up. So now they're trying to get the people that have been there for 30 or 40 years out. So we also now we're getting into that to see what type of landlords are just letting the building go down so people will have to move, or waiting till you just tear up your apartment and not do anything about it. So it's not only are we doing it for the stop and frisk, we're doing it for the community itself, trying to find out where is jobs that can go. Especially we're mostly concerned about the young people in the neighborhood, because with nothing to do, then you think of other things to do that's not, you know what I'm trying to say. I'm getting a little emotional because I got 2 sons. They can't think of nothing positive to do. And if you're constantly being stopped and stuff, you're thinking that this is all I am. And my kids have a mother and a father. They have neighbors that care about them, other parents. We do raise a village. So I don't want you to leave outside that gate and think after you're gone out there, this is what you gotta be. I might as well be what you think I am, because that's not it. That's a bully messing with my sons and the rest of my friends' kids as they go out here. We're against bullying. And so the police department has become a bully in my eyesight. So not only are we doing it there, we're trying to make sure they have community centers, something else that they can do something positive to keep the thought in their head that they are somebody. So no, this is not only it. That's why to that question, it's not over. The end is not here. We started in 2011, and it ends 2014, and we got a long, long way to go. My baby is growing up.
They said we got one more question, so you respond and then we take one more question.
Okay, I just wanted to address that question because I think, as Jackie and we all sort of said, we're not done. So I think that's part of like what we're doing now. Like we're here today, we're in DC next month, so we're out here, we were in the neighborhood, and now we're spreading out. And we also are thinking about what's needed. And we have an artist coming to us from California. He's working with us now to do something in the neighborhood. So I think that's also our question to ourselves, like what needs to be done. So.
And just to be honest, it's complicated to think about, you know, us as a research body and doing like activist work. And we're always having this kind of like really intentional conversation of like, you know, what's out of our capacity, what can we do, what can't we do, how can we engage, how can we create a space, how can we have dialogue with folks in the Bronx to kind of like further the work. You know, so those are real questions. You know, we understand that having this data is one thing, but just having the data is not enough for some of us, you know? So one more question and we going, right? Who has the last question?
So that folks can read how you do this stuff?
We read these things and we have 2 or 3 articles coming out on one already.
Do we have one? You coming for you.
As he's getting to that person, the comment that Coyle just made now, it's not just right budgets and whatever resources that are sort of out of communication with each other on this kind of work, which I know you all experience, but also this idea of what it means to be an activist scholar, a public scholar, to do public science. The conversations that Coyle is talking about, we've been really in the thick of right now. Because as we're moving to different stages to think about sort of what are the dominant narratives around policing, right, around community safety, and how do we use our knowledge to really open up sometimes what are very you know, just simple binaries that get created or simple black and white conversations. And the reality is that most of our data, there is some really stark findings around these injustices that are happening. But there's also complicated things. There's a neighborhood, you know, as Paul was saying, people want police. In a neighborhood that has been, like, tortured by the police, people still want police. What is that about? Some of our members are actually, really have an abolition perspective and feel like we do not ever need police in neighborhoods. Other folks don't feel that way. Other folks remember what it was like to live in a neighborhood that was actively and is actively disinvested in, and there was no police on top of all of that, right? What that felt like. So I think one of the things that we've been reminding ourselves, or trying to think about, is like, what is our role in this? We're not purely activists, right? We're not purely academics that are so convinced in crazy notions of objectivity that we're so far removed from the ground, right? We're trying to fuse a different path, but we're validating all of those things. We don't want to stop being activist scholars, we don't want to stop being scholars, and we don't want to stop being activists. So how do we move forward? Some folks, we get it, are giving up on research. We're actually not, right? We're seeing that not as the only tool, but as an important tool in this larger struggle for justice in this neighborhood and in this community.
Thanks, my name is Leslie. I just wanted to ask a quick question. Thank you for your presentation. To the two gentlemen that were approached to take the survey and ended up joining the Mars Justice Project, what was it that you saw that made you trust, either maybe not up front, but like something caught you and engaged you and helped you to trust?
For me, it was people, Jackie, Paul, Fawn, Nadine, Corey, like, really. They seemed sincere about it. And, you know, for me, it's just one thing, you know, to sit and talk about it, but they was actually out there doing the work, you know, before I came, and, you know, I just wanted to be a part of it.
Well, for me, like you said, the people seem sincere, but the main thing is that I was surprised to see that there were people even concerned with it. It was on the news regularly, and just walking down the street, you would see. I would be headed to work, and I would see 2 or 3 kids lined up against the wall. Police is going through their pockets. Some kids are struggling with them, telling them, I didn't give you consent to search me. So in seeing that in the community on a daily basis, and then a few weeks later running into people who are saying, hey, you want to do something about that? You want to talk about it? You want to give your opinion? Because you know you can't stop a police officer and say, excuse me, why are you searching him? That's not going to happen. Because you're going to be searching, like you said, you're going to be on the ground with his knee in your neck, and you're going to be going through it. And then other people are going to be standing by looking at you. So you can't approach them directly. This way gave me a voice to be able to say, I'm concerned about that. I don't want that to happen to my son. I don't want you to think just because a woman is walking down the street holding the hand of another woman that it's okay to stop and harass them and say little racial slurs, and that's your way of voicing your opinion, and they can't do anything about it. So in seeing that there was somebody in the community wanting to talk about it, I said, well, I want to talk about it, but I want to talk about it from a different aspect. I don't want to just talk. I want to do something. I want to try to make a change. And like Brett said, the stop and frisk is down, not to where we would like it to be, but to answer the gentleman's question over there as well, we're not done. We're not done. You might see us back here in a different capacity with a completely different reason to be here. But just know that, like she said, the research, we have the data, we have the knowledge, we have the know-how, but we're not done. That's the main thing. We're not just saying, okay, it's over, everybody pack it up, let's go home. No, because it's going to be something else that's going to transpire, that's going to spark one of us to say, you know what? Here's our next baby. Right here. Let's take this baby and grow it into an adult, and oh, there's another one. We're not done. We're not done.
think that's the most fitting ending we could have had here, is that we're not done. Can we join one more time? Thank you. There'll be